Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and happy holidays. In this video, we're taking a trip eastwards on I-4 all the way over to Cocoa Beach and the Florida East Coast Railroad, along with Brightline and all the stuff going on over there. But first, we're set up at Loftman Holdout along the A line for Amtrak 97. They'll be coming through here in just a couple minutes, and then we'll head east. Located at the crossing of Ronald Reagan Parkway and Loftman, the town's namesake holdout signal is at milepost A819.4, 5 miles north of Davenport Siding and about 6 miles out from Kissimmee and the beginning of the Central Florida Rail Corridor. Loftman doesn't protect any sidings, interlockings, or junction, acting as a glorified dispatcher-controlled distance signal to said control points. The signal layout here is the same way it was when the Atlantic Coastline first installed it, the southbound lights on the north side of the road crossing with the northbound on our side. The southbound signal would be displaying a high green for Amtrak 97, letting today's engineer know he's good for 79, the passenger speed limit around here. During Thanksgiving break this year, I'd be staying with family in Orlando, and now only being about 45 minutes from the East Coast and a railroad that I rarely find myself documenting, I'd take the opportunity to plan a morning trackside with my friend Weston, a known FEC local rail fan and my tour guide for the day. So it's 5:02 a.m. as I head east on the 528 towards Cocoa Beach on another foggy, cold November morning. I'd pick up Weston soon after, and arriving at our first spot, we'd have a high green on a pair of ABS signals at milepost 182.6. This is Suntree Boulevard, and a good spot to catch Brightline in their 110 mph territory. BLF 720 would start our day about 2 minutes after setting up, with the first load of passengers from Orlando heading for South Florida. Knowing that another Brightline was next, we'd move down the line to Post Road, another spot where trains fly by, now on a curve with some light from a nearby laundromat spilling onto the tracks. With a crescent moon above, BLF 721 would be calling signals coming our way, a somewhat new operation on the FEC. I believe they started doing this when Tri-Rail began their service on FEC trackage in downtown Miami, and to keep the whole system aligned with itself, now everyone's getting the same treatment. For rail fans, though, it's definitely a big help, considering there's crossovers and signals every few miles on this stretch of double track. Speaking of signals and radio callouts, it would help us out as we left a 7-Eleven after getting gas, and pulling into Parkway Drive, parking the car in the vacant church parking lot next to the tracks. In moments, our first bit of freight action would round the curve, calling as FEC 202, intermodal from Hialeah to Bowden Yard in Jacksonville, working Titusville, which is just north of us along the way. 202 is a night train for most of its trip, today seen in the first bit of daylight as the sun begins its morning ascent over the horizon. Leading today's 202 would be FEC 801, a GE ES44C4 powered partly by that tender of natural gas behind the coupler. As many of you know by now, Ferromex now owns FEC, and that second engine in the consist is a precursor to what probably all or at least most of FEC's power will end up looking like. Not my favorite, to be honest, so to still catch a good amount of the railroad's unique red and gold champion scheme today would be worth the drive itself. This is milepost 188, where a spur for Titan and Cemex breaks out from the West Main and is now served by FEC's area local 920, which we'll see later in the day. For now, we knew we had another northbound close behind 202, so we'd keep driving south to intercept. South on US 1 a few miles, and we're coming into Melbourne. Here we try and utilize the little sunlight that we had, now just after 6:30, as another northbound FEC train approached. South of downtown a block or so is the new bridge over Crane Creek, rebuilt to handle the new double track that was brought to this entire line by Brightline's Orlando operations. The double track was a smart move by the railroad, as seen today, keeping freights and passenger moves moving and on time, even amidst the morning rush. Approaching from the south with Rock for Cocoa Beach and City Point would be FEC 336. Just a few years ago, this train was your best bet for an EMD leader on this line, now overtaken by GEs like most other trains and railroads alike. Today would be no exception, as 336 pounds over the bridge with a short train of loaded aggregate. The plan was to chase 336 towards Cocoa, but hearing a southbound leaving Titusville, we'd break off the pursuit back to where we caught 202. Now setting up for that train's counterpart, 101. Southbound intermodal and manifest traffic for Miami, working Port Everglades and Fort Lauderdale along the way. Another champion scheme leader on this one, as the golden sun continues to rise, seen now at 7:18 a.m. With 101 speeding south, we knew we were never going to be seeing him again, so back onto US 1, now heading northbound. Just like the interstate numbering system that we have here in America, local highways are also categorized and numbered via their location. For the highways, the numbers rise as you head west, making the easternmost road in the country number 1, which is why the Atlantic Ocean is just feet away as you drive up US 1. Back to Suntree now, we'd get another view at what 110 miles an hour looks like, now in good light as BLF 722 barrels south. North 12 miles, again on US 1, we're now in Cocoa Beach at the junction where Brightline's Orlando line splits off to the west. The front end of that 336 would be visible from our stance, as they've now looped back onto the main after dropping pieces of their train around the balloon track at Cemex. Those low-sided black gondolas are to be dropped in a siding that breaks off the spur, which those locomotives are backing into. Brightline has confirmed that the vacant lot west of their tracks here will one day be the site of Cocoa's very own station, along with a secondary main line when traffic increases, or at least they hope it will. This is the beginning of Brightline service on FEC trackage, but the end of the day for today's 336, as the crew parks their power within the facility, plan to lead tonight's train 335, the southbound empty version of 336, usually pulling south around midnight. We'd stick around Cocoa long enough for the signals to light up for Brightline train 723, coming off the Orlando side, taking the sharp banked curve at a respectable 50 miles an hour. After 723, we'd hear the FEC dispatcher giving authority to train 103 to blast off from Titusville southbound towards us. 103, you might recall, is a train that we didn't see in our visit to West Palm earlier this year. That's because this train terminates in Fort Pierce and only runs Tuesdays through Saturdays. It's loved by many rail fans down here for its favorable daylight schedule and its pair of 4- and 6-axle EMD power sets. Today would thankfully be no different, departing Titusville around 8:45 a.m. this morning with SD40 number 711 in charge. Champion Scheme SD40s are my favorite engines on the FEC, so I'd be stoked to catch one this day, making the decision here with Weston to attempt to chase it all the way down the line to Melbourne. Setting up just south of Bird Plaza, we'd catch 103 at track speed, perfectly framed by the native vegetation and some really good morning light. By Rockledge, we'd be pacing the train, with US 1 actually opening up for once, making it possible to keep up with this 50-mile-an-hour train. Back into downtown Melbourne, we'd get the train at Palmetto Avenue as another bright line called Signals in the distance, rapidly catching up to the both of us. Jeep 40-2 number 415 would trail behind the 7-Eleven and would also be a treat to me, as it's only a matter of time before all these Jeeps are repainted into Grupo Blue, a scheme hated by many, including me. Trains like this on the FEC make you feel like you're back in the 90s, where EMD duos were common on through trains, now a thing of the past, or a modern-day treat to the explorers. Just 4 minutes behind the 103 would be BLF 724, another South Florida-bound bright line hauling southbound through downtown. Established and incorporated in 1888 by Mr. John Hector, the city of Melbourne now hosts a population of 86,000 residents with a quaint downtown right off of US 1. Split into two by the large Indian River and now FEC's double track, Melbourne is a great place to settle down and watch the trains pass. We do just that as we walk through town and south a few blocks to the last crossing before the bridge over Crane Creek, where we saw 336 this morning. Local train 920 would be coming up from Fort Pierce as a bright line cleared, with one more surprise for both me and Weston, as Veterans Unit number 430 highballs north with Rockford Titan and Cemex and other customers south of us. And for the third time today, I'd parked the car at the church and set up in the grass next to the tracks at milepost 188. 920 would beat us here by a few minutes, pulling out empties from the spur shortly after I'd get the chance to put the drone up. At one point, this spur track was only accessible at this switch, meaning northbound locals were the only ones able to switch it, but a few years ago, a southern switch would be installed so that the local can run around their train without having to use both west and east main lines. This is important with Brightline now, as the west main is already blocked by 920's cut. In a simple empties out and loads in operation, 430 would continue to switch out the spur here as we'd head south. Like I stated before, Brightline runs hourly through here, so we'd set up a couple miles south where the FEC crosses the Eau Gallie River. That's French for rocky waters, which is a pretty accurate translation for this waterway running steadily under a busy railroad. From the south would soon come BLF 702, running not a minute late. Around the corner is Sarno Road, and more ABS LED signals, once again green for another bright line, this one calling a southbound 720. About 30 minutes later, we'd find ourselves a bit further south, close to the Melbourne airport, where a straightaway would align with the noontime light. We knew 920 with the 430 would have to come south again soon, so setting up at South Babcock Street, we'd start our wait. About 20 minutes would pass before from the north BLF 702 would appear. And you can only go so far on this line without finding at least one South Florida driver. Pretty unsafe, but also quite entertaining. Finally, 920 would get the light to head back south towards Fort Pierce, now pulling Long Hood forward with a sizable train. This would wrap up our morning trackside, which I'd say went pretty well. As we know by now, waking up early is the best move when railfanning, but I'd say FEC makes it worth it, with a total of 16 trains today, actually a common amount most mornings over here. I hope to railfan this railroad more often in the coming months. Let me know what y'all think in the comments below. But for now, at milepost 192 along the FEC, I'll see you next time trackside. This is Christian from Multicolor Films, end of transmission.